glaring at her wayward colleagues were as sharp as a pair of blades. A high-ranked healer was comparable to one's own mother in a way, because she was responsible for the raid team's overall well-being. The team members had to swallow their dissatisfaction and keep their mouths shut, as if they were being scolded by their mother. Jiang Yi-rim formed a grin. She then airily spun around and extended her hand to Jinwoo for a handshake. "I'm the main healer of the Night Order's elite assault team, Jiang. Rim, it's a pleasure to meet you." She formed a soft smile with her eyes and continued on. "I don't know about others, but seeing that you're about to lead the team, and the fact that I'm the main healer, we should be at least on the same page before we start, yes." Jinwoo avoided meeting her ulterior motive-filled eyes and looked at Park Jong-soo instead. "You haven't explained to them already." "Oh, that. Well," Park Jong-soo scratched the back of his head as if he was embarrassed about something. "My schedule had been just too tight, you see. I was so busy with going through all the formalities and summoning these guys out here that I've ended up forgetting about it. I, Park Jong-soo, will take the lead for today's raid." "Chairman, it's you again. But we have Hunter Seong Jinwoo here, so why? Is it okay to even do that?" Park Jong-soo was a tanker at the very top of the rank A, so it was definitely not a strange occurrence to have him lead a team. Excluding those times that he couldn't participate due to his condition being less than ideal, the majority of the raids happened under Park Jong-soo's leadership. However, didn't they have a rank S hunter among the team now? The strongest hunter present taking up the lead. This was one of the commonly accepted rules in raiding a dungeon. Park Jong-soo quickly offered up an explanation for the sake of his confused teammates. "Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim will take up the role of guarding our rear, and will ensure our safety during the raid itself. Watch the assault team from the back and take care of the safety of the team members." This was Park Jong-soo's demand. This was for the safety of the team, of course, but also for the sake of the guild's honor as well. It's the ogre, somewhat different from Jinwoo's own premonition. The assault team was greeted by huge trouble from the entrance instead. It's the twin-head ogre. Everyone, be careful. A monster that would typically appear as a boss in other high-ranked dungeons was standing in the entrance, its bloodshot eyes glaring at the hunters. A twin-head ogre was about twice the size of a regular ogre, but it was difficult to quantify how many times greater the creature's powers were. If it were any other regular assault team that had to face off against a twin-head ogre in a dungeon, they would have been utterly frightened out of their senses and have tried to escape right away. But, let's go. It was a different story with the elites of the Night Order. Park Jong-soo the tanker raised his shield up and rushed towards the ogre. Slam! The impact force actually shook the interior of the dungeon. However, Park Jong-soo activated his skill in time to balloon up his muscle mass and managed to endure against the incredible physical strength of the twin-head ogre without being brought down to his knees. "Hyung Nim, I'm fine. Then, I'm coming, too." The sub-tanker, Jeong Yun-ti, stood next to Park Jong-soo, succeeding in his mission to get the ogre's attention locked firmly onto himself. Park Jong-soo yelled out loudly, veins in his neck standing up. "Attack." With that, the counteroffensive of the Night Order commenced. Arrows, magic spells, swords, and spears rained down on the twin-head ogre. The twin-head ogre became agitated and began rampaging around. However, Park Jong-soo didn't give the monster a chance to divert its attention elsewhere. Meanwhile, Jeong Yun-ti quickly ran over and defended the others whenever they were targeted by the ogre. Just now, Jeong Yun-ti defended against the ogre's kick and was shoved back greatly as 2 lions were gouged on the ground by his feet. Thanks to him, though, other hunters suffered almost no damage at all. The body of the ogre was gradually shaved away due to the combined attacks of the damage dealers. It was a spectacular teamwork. From this spectacle alone, Jinwoo could now understand why the Night Order Guild managed to lock down on the position of Yeongnam District's #1 for such a long time. Eventually, the ogre fell backwards, bubbles foaming in its mouths. Thud! It was the moment when a boss-level monster fell without injuring a single person. A perfect victory, in other words. We'll stay here for a bit longer to recheck our equipment before advancing forward. Ah, okay, please do. Jinwoo nodded his head. While he only needed to drink potions to refill his magic energy or stamina, other hunters clearly suffered from a physical limit to their magical energy reserve or fatigue. It seems likely that this raid won't be easy, unfortunately. To think we'd end up running into a twin-head ogre right from the start. He rubbed his chin before turning to look at Jinwoo with a grin. "Do you know what the nickname of a twin-head ogre is, by any chance?" Jinwoo shook his head, and the older man replied as if he expected that answer. "It's the Gravekeeper." "Did that nickname come about because it was such a powerful monster that killed a lot of people?" However, Park Jong-soo's explanation was far off Jinwoo's estimations. The thing is, the older man cast his gaze deeper into the cavern's interior. An ominous aura seemed to be oozing out from the other side of the cavern, still enshrouded in darkness, at least in his eyes. When you meet one as the boss of a dungeon, it's fine. But when you run into one right at the beginning, then well, you'll find that this dungeon. Park Jong-soo sounded worried as he finished his sentence. This dungeon is full of undead monsters. An urgent call came through to the Hunters Association emergency hotline. The caller's voice belonged to a young teenage girl. Is this the association? The call center employee heard the scared sobbing coming from the other side of the line as soon as the call got connected, and realized something was wrong. Yes, it is. Please speak. I'm in, my school, but there are monsters outside. Outside? Where are you making this call from? I'm hiding. I was with my friend, but my friend, I'm in the bathroom. Her sobbing meant that her words were constantly being cut off and it was hard to carry on a conversation. However, the call center employee was experienced enough to piece together those stuttering words and figured out what this girl was trying to say. Immediately, an urgent message was sent to the association's main building. How many monsters are there? Are they any near you right now? I don't know. I really don't know. I hear screams. Sob. I can hear so many screams. Am I going to die? Please calm down and listen to my voice. This employee knew very well from his extensive experience about how weak-kneed humans could get when faced with life-threatening situations. Right now, hunters from the association are headed your way. These hunters will not give up on you guys. That is why you need to stay calm and rational, okay? Can you hear me? Really? In that case, can I survive? The voice coming from the other side of the line was gradually recovering from the panic state. That was a good sign. The employee thought that he succeeded in calming the female student down, and then asked the question that could prove to be most important in saving the girl's life. By any chance, those monsters? Do you know what kind of monsters those are? Yes, I know. I saw them on TV. Which monsters are they? If the monsters possessed weak senses and chased after humans using their eyes, then hiding in a bathroom would work as a suitable solution for the time being. The employee prayed that such monsters had invaded the school instead. They have human bodies, but they have ugly faces. And their skin is green. Can it be? The eyes of the employee grew wider and wider. Orcs? Are they orcs? Yes, I think it was what they were called. Orcs? And no, this can't be. The employee shot up from his seat before he realized it and cried out. You need to run away from there. Hurry, orcs can. It was then, despite the employee's earnest prayer, he could hear the sound of the bathroom door being destroyed, followed soon by a sorrowful scream. The Night Order's raid was trucking along quite smoothly. As a matter of fact, things were working out so well that the hunters felt the whole thing was strangely too easy. For instance, they encountered yet another monster, but a rotting creature the size of a house tried to escape from the assault team, only to get ensnared by the restriction magic spell cast by the mage-type hunter, and soon, it too met with a grisly end. And when the exact same thing repeated itself over and over again, the hunters were getting progressively more puzzled. Isn't this weird? Why are these monsters running away when they see us? Isn't it like they were being chased away? What's the matter, Seong Hunter Nim? Is something following us? Jinwoo didn't answer her. As a matter of fact, his heart was beating so madly that he didn't even have any leeway to answer her questions. Could it be? Jinwoo's eyes, as they stared towards the outside of this dungeon, began quaking violently. Only then did Jeong Yi-rim also realize that something was wrong as well. Heartbreaking screams rose up from all corners of the school. Less than half of the students managed to escape from the school alive. As for the rest, either they had all ended up as corpses, or were busy running around inside the school's premise trying to evade the orcs. Unfortunately, their futile resistance could only buy them a brief respite. The hunts of the orcs that started from the lowest floor continued on to higher floors and drove all victims caught in their wake to gruesome deaths. The students who couldn't run away in time and remained trapped in their classrooms could only cover their ears as more screams rose up from the lower floors. The classrooms for the third-year students were located on the top floor of the school building. Jinha was also among those third-year students who couldn't run away in time. The doorway shoddily blocked up with junk was the only thing that could defend them against the marauding orc horde. FCKME. The male students grabbed onto chairs and mops or whatever that could serve as weapons with their trembling hands. But none of them helped to instill a sense of confidence in the scared students. No, all they could do was to wait and pray fervently for the hunters to show up before those orcs stepped foot inside their classroom. The bent classroom door was flung away. As the screams of the frightened students resounded out, 2 orcs covered in the blood of the countless number of people they had murdered stepped into the classroom. A male student holding a mop near the door threw away his makeshift weapon and ran to the back entrance, before yanking it open. However, another orc was lying in wait there, and it slammed an axe down on the forehead of this fleeing male student. The male student fell powerlessly, the light of life leaving his eyes. Both entrances of the classroom were now blocked off by the orcs. The remaining students screamed out loudly and crowded against the windows, but they all knew that the results would largely end up the same regardless of whether they chose to jump out from a 6-story window or get caught by the orcs. Appa, finding herself stuck in the middle of the students fleeing towards the corners of the classroom as they tried to get away from the orcs, Jinha squeezed her eyes shut and called out to Jinwoo, her Appa, the rank S hunter. If she called out to him, it felt as if he'd show up here right away. Boss, there is a human with magic energy coming off. Kill that one first. Unlike regular humans, those that knew how to wield magic energy were dangerous opponents. Therefore, these orcs had to deal with a threat like that first. The orc, having received the boss's order, began scanning the students before eventually locking onto Jinha's location. The orc grabbed her wrist and dragged her out to the middle of the classroom. Is this female the one? It is, boss. The underling was right. Although faint, they could sense magic energy coming from somewhere on this girl. Whether that came from this female's abilities or some sort of a weapon she possessed, it didn't change the fact that she had to be eliminated first before everyone else. The boss raised its axe up. Jinha saw the axe rising up high above her head and eventually squeezed her eyes shut. The boss twitched its nose and swung the axe down with a disinterested face. But then this happened. A veil of black smoke suddenly exploded out from Jinha's shadow and took on a solid shape. Grab. The brows of the advanced scout's boss shot up high in surprise, because it just realized that a high orc wearing black armor suddenly appeared out of nowhere to grab onto its wrist. That was why. Before the puzzled orc could say something, the high orc threw a simple punch and shattered the head of the monster like an exploding watermelon. The jaws of the students watching this sight fell to the floor. They were about to avert their gazes before the scene of their classmate getting murdered played out. Yet these soldiers decked out in black armor suddenly appeared without a single warning. Soldiers? No, hold on. Was it even okay to call those things soldiers? But these monsters looked more orcish than orcs themselves, and were at least double the size of an orc and featured red skin. Really, when standing before the black-armored orc, that scary-looking orc now resembled a boy about to enter his teenage years instead. But that was to be expected. The shadow soldiers Jinwoo had left behind in Jinha's shadow were the high orcs serving as the guards of the boss monster Fangs from the high-ranking dungeon. Not only that, these guys were the cream of the warrior crop found there. Regular orcs dared to have a go against high orc warriors. What a funny notion that was. The students were freaking out properly now. Yuck. The terrifying monsters threatening their lives up until only a few seconds ago were getting massacred by even more monsterish monsters now. Their current level of shock and fear had gone far past what they could tolerate, and caused the inside of these students' heads to completely blank out. Except for one person, that was. Only Jinha knew the significance of those black armors and began crying softly. Appa, did Appa. Jinha could sense her Appa's trace from these 3 high orcs surrounding her like a trio of bodyguards. Did those monsters save us? Are we being protected? At the bare minimum, they felt sure of these black-armored orcs weren't going to harm them. Where is Appa? Is he here? Jinha tearfully asked for Jinwoo, but the high orc soldiers didn't reply back to her. Appa, instead, they lightly stopped her when she tried to go somewhere else. When Jinha cautiously looked up at the high orc, the creature silently shook its head. The top priority for these high orcs was to secure Jinha's safety. They couldn't let her roam around the building when it was packed full of enemies right now. And, sure enough, footsteps climbing up the stairs could be heard coming from outside the classroom. The attitude of Hunter Seong Jinwoo, who was practically a paragon of relaxation up until a few seconds ago, suddenly did a complete 180. Something urgent came up and I must leave now. Park Jong-soo's complexion darkened. Without your presence, Seong Hunter Nim, we could find ourselves in great danger. You know this too, don't you? Park Jong-soo did his best to dissuade Jinwoo in the most roundabout way he could think of. He was acutely aware that agitating Jinwoo was far more dangerous than attempting to clear this dungeon without the young rank S hunter's help. That was how badly contorted Jinwoo's current expression was. Let me call on a friend that you can place your trust in, as much as you'd trust me. From here on, that friend will take care of everything. Park Jong-soo's ears perked up. Not just anyone, but another hunter whose ability was guaranteed by none other than Hunter Seong Jinwoo himself. Who could it be? Choi Jong-in? Or is it Cha Hien? Now that Park Jong-soo thought about it, didn't he see a document containing Hunter Cha Hien's profile in Jinwoo's office yesterday? If it's Cha Hunter Nim, then yeah, she'll be more than enough. Although it was regretful that he couldn't stop Jinwoo from leaving, but still, Park Jong-soo's expression got brighter at the prospect of the potential replacement. Jinwoo didn't waste time hesitating and summoned forth the most powerful soldier in his shadow army. Beru, the king of ants, its body shrouded in black mist, answered its master's call. Beru didn't bother to mask its overwhelmingly evil magic energy, and that freaked the hunters out so much that they had to retreat far away immediately. That absolutely horrendous amount of magic energy, and the exact same outer appearance as that thing. See, could that be? And no, but how come? These hunters immediately recognized the identity of Beru. Without a doubt, this was the very same mutated ant monster that toyed around with the Korean rank S hunters back inside Jeju Island's ant tunnel. With these high-ranked hunters recognizing Beru, it became more convenient for him now since he didn't need to explain himself any further. The whole of the country witnessed Beru's power, after all. From here onwards, this guy will sub for me. He ignored the panicking Park Young-soo and gave a new order to Beru. Protect these humans. I shall follow. Beru made a short reply and raised its head. In that case, oh my king, what should I do about the existences besides these humans? Jinwoo shifted his gaze over to the deepest part of the dungeon for a second or two, before issuing one more order to Beru. Do whatever you wish. It was right then. Beru's repressed desire to kill morphed into an unbridled joy and spread all over its body. Beru stood back up and screeched out loudly, the entire cavern reverberating from that horrifying sound. Hunters began trembling from that screech, even though it wasn't even directed at them. Wait. We need to finish the raid with that thing. Cold perspiration trickled down Park Jong-soo's back. Jinwoo didn't even pay any mind to the reactions of the hunters and simply summoned 20 more ant shadow beast soldiers to aid Beru's cause. Having breathed in the fresh outside air for the first time in a long while, the beast soldiers began screeching out loudly as well. And quite obviously, every hunter bearing witness to this spectacle froze up where they stood. Hold on. Jiang Yi-rim quickly turned around and called out to Jinwoo. Are you going to leave just like that? After letting loose this monster's here. If you want, I'll simply undo the summoning. But when that happens, Jiang Yi-rim flinched when Jinwoo's cold glare landed on her. I'll no longer care about what happens to the Night Order Guild. Jinwoo made a promise, and that was, he'd protect the members of the Night Order Guild and ensure that they wouldn't get harmed. However, if the other side declined his act of goodwill first, then he didn't see the need to stay responsible for these people, either. Jinwoo's unyielding declaration shut up the mouths of not just Jiang Yi-rim, but the rest of the Night Order's hunters, as well. As his distance from the raid team grew, Jinwoo summoned up his skills window to confirm. Class specific, remaining before the skill can be used again. A minute. Jinwoo bit his lower lip. He needed to wait over an hour if he were to use the Shadow Exchange skill. The signals from his soldiers were still coming in, even right now. He was getting a really bad premonition here. I can't wait for another hour. He needed to exit from this dungeon first. Making up his mind thus, Jinwoo took another step. But then, undead monsters that were supposed to be finished off after the assault team went past here began raising their bodies up again. Jinwoo's eyes burned brilliantly from rage. He was enraged by these worthless monsters trying to block his path. When that happened, like a lie, the undead monsters all knelt down towards Jinwoo. Flop, flop. There was not one exception here. Every single revived undead monster was prostrating before Jinwoo now. But why? Jinwoo tilted his head. Could the reason for every monster encountered by the assault team being so terrified be all because of him? Is it because I possess a higher ranked class than a necromancer capable of controlling the undead? The current situation was puzzling, but he didn't have enough time to think about this too deeply. He stored the short sword back in his inventory and ran with all his might to exit from the gate. The attention of the people waiting outside the gate focused on him in an instant. Why did only Hunter Seong Jinwoo get out of the gate? They sent their curiosity-filled gazes in his direction. But Jinwoo ignored them all. Kaisel. Suddenly, a sky dragon covered in black mist revealed itself. The spectators immediately recognized the sky dragon, which had appeared in the news a couple of times before, and they began crying out while pointing to Jinwoo. To where my little sister is, at your fastest speed. If something tried to block his way, he'd smash past them regardless of what they were. Kaisel roared out in happiness, knowing that now it could flap its wings without any restrictions whatsoever. Kyok. Right away, Kaisel unfurled its massive wings and took to the sky. The last restriction was finally undone. Finally gaining the freedom of movement, the owner of the dungeon left the boss chamber and strode outside the gate. It was the chieftain of the orcs, Guruktaru. Its entire body was covered in black tattoos, seemingly not leaving behind even a single patch of empty skin. Tattoos signified victory to orcs. These were proof of how many battles this creature fought and how many enemies it had slain so far. Guruktaru, Guruktaru. The orcs waiting for the chieftain in front of the gate chanted out its name and lowered their heads. High orc warriors are aiding humans. High orcs. Indeed, high orc warriors were strong. Regular orc warriors wouldn't be able to fight against them. Meaning, it was now time for the chieftain to step up. How many? 3. Even if their opponents were strong. What a shameful notion it was for dozens of great orc warriors to fail at subduing only 3 high orcs. Pathetic. Guruktaru's expression crumpled. The orcs were scared stiff from the chieftain's anger and began trembling like leaves. Lights of madness were burning furiously within Guruktaru's eyes. Insolent beastards. It was now time to demand appropriate compensation from the high orcs, who dare to interrupt the hunting of the orc warriors. Suddenly finding himself left behind along with ant monsters, Park Jong-soo was feeling rather dumbstruck at the moment. Hyung Nim, leave me for a bit, okay? I need time to think. Being surrounded by over 20 of these monsters, no summons, Park Jong-soo was getting this close to abandoning this raid altogether. Okay, so, let's say that we give up on this raid. If so, then how should he explain the result of this raid to the reporters waiting outside? Could he say, Hunter Seong Jinwoo had to suddenly leave the assault team and therefore they couldn't afford to advance forward anymore? Or, they had to give up on the raid because they got too scared of the new friends Hunter Seong Jinwoo summoned here for them? What kind of an embarrassment would that be? Didn't matter which excuse was used, it had become a source of ridicule for them, probably for forever. Park Jong-soo clenched his teeth. Fine, we go forward. Did it really matter if they were scared of these summons? At the end of the day, weren't they Hunter Seong Jinwoo's slaves? When Park Jong-soo thought about this, his mind calmed down just a tad. I mean, seriously, these guys are Seong Hunter Nim's summoned creatures, so they won't do anything weird to us, right? Park Jong-soo's confidence-filled eyes shifted over to Beru, and the latter approached the hunter after sensing his gaze. Yuck. The confidence of a few seconds ago evaporated real fast, and Park Jong-soo could barely squeeze out a trembling voice. Well, let's get going. Rather naturally, he began speaking in a super polite tone. However, Beru showed no reaction even after hearing Park Jong-soo's voice. No, it just stood there and simply stared back. Wondering if his manner of speech was still not good enough for this creature's whims, Park Jong-soo became even more polite in his tone. Should we get going now? Even then, Beru showed no sign of budging from the spot. Park Jong-soo's consciousness was gradually getting fainter as he had to stare longer and longer into the powerful glare of the creature in front of him. Could it be that this guy can't understand what I'm saying here, and that's why it's not moving? When Park Jong-soo's thoughts reached this point, he forced his facial muscle to contort into an ungainly smile, and then he pointed towards the interior of the dungeon. In front, forward. In that moment, the mutated ant monster disappeared instantly, along with the sound of a bullet leaving the silenced gun. Where did it go? Even before Park Jong-soo could scan his vicinity with puzzled eyes, Beru returned to his original position. Beru then pushed forward something held in his hand towards Park Jong-soo's face. What the heck? When the flustered hunter took a closer look, he realized that the mystery object was actually the head of a monster. Not only that, it was the helmet of one of the most powerful undead monsters, Death Knight, with a rotting head still trapped inside. Park Jong-soo freaked out and plopped down his butt real hard. The other members of the assault team also were jolted into stunned silence and hurriedly gathered around Park Jong-soo. Beru disinterestedly scanned the hunters now grouped together in one spot. He loudly screeched out to the rest of the ant monsters. With that, the ant army began to march forward in perfect order. Beru looked down at Park Jong-soo still on the ground for a little while, before he slowly turned around and followed after the marching ants. The hunters hurriedly checked out Park Jong-soo's current condition. Hyung Nim, Chairman, are you all right? Are you okay? Park Jong-soo replied to them with a stupefied face. I'm okay. His body was fine, but, for some reason, his heart ached instead. It felt as if he got ridiculed by a summoned creature. There's no way that's true, surely not. Indeed, a summoned creature couldn't have possessed such a level of intelligence. Whatever the case may be, though, he couldn't give up on this raid now that he even got humiliated somewhat like this. Park Jong-soo dusted off his butt and got back up. Let's go, as well. The expressions of the hunters stiffened up. Hey, you want to follow after those things? How can we go on a raid with monsters? The high orc warriors were indeed strong. Unfortunately, they were still no match for the orc chieftain, Guruktaru. The orc's leader left behind its guards in the corridor and stepped forward to fight all by itself. And then, while easily evading the attacks of the high orcs, pulled out a scimitar sheathed on its back. Is this all you have? The interior of the classroom was filled with the corpses of the orcs. Even at a casual count, there were 50 of them here. Make me enjoy this more, warriors of the high orc race. The chieftain's rage was transferred directly into merciless swings of its curved blade. Guruktaru's scimitar drew elaborate arcs in the air, and began shaving away the high orcs, their armors and all. The screams didn't come from the high orcs, naturally, but from the mouths of the humans hiding behind them. Guruktaru's forehead creased up in displeasure. Annoyingly noisy. After taking care of these high orcs, those bugs would be next. Guruktaru sliced off an arm of a high orc and chopped it up in fine pieces until it got eventually bored of doing that, and spun on its heels to cut off the opponent's neck clean off. When that happened, other orcs who had retreated outside the classroom because of the high orcs all began raising loud cheers. Guruktaru, Guruktaru. It was then Guruktaru's brows quivered. The headless high orc morphed to black smoke before reverting back to how it was originally, right in front of its eyes. Is this shamanism? Even after the orc chieftain cut and sliced its enemies several more times, the story remained the same. Guruktaru eventually became really frustrated and roared out. It had sliced and hacked these high orcs numerous times to death, yet they all reverted back to their original shapes again and again. It won't be hard killing them hundreds, thousands times. However, there would be no end in sight if that happened. Even right now, that DMN voice in its head was repeatedly ordering Guruktaru to kill humans. As a matter of fact, the orc was beginning to suffer from a migraine as the voice continuously rang inside its head. But that didn't mean it could ignore these high orcs and try to kill the humans, either. Time to finish this. Guruktaru rolled its brain into gear. If these high orcs were creations from some kind of sorcery, then without a doubt, there must be a shaman controlling them somewhere. Guruktaru had fought against many different kinds of sorcery in the past battles, and therefore, it subsequently knew how to end this dirty trick once and for all, as well. That human female, standing far behind these high orcs and holding her breath. Although faint, she was somehow connected to these high orcs. Guruktaru's eyes gleamed dangerously. So, is it you? The monster's target for its murderous rage was redirected to her. The moment Jinha met Guruktaru's gaze, her entire body shuddered uncontrollably. That human female definitely knew something. Guruktaru decided as so, and pointed at Jinha while glancing behind itself. Kill that human female. Even before its words were finished, the guards observing the fight from the back rushed forward to carry out Guruktaru's order. Then, the high orcs ignored Guruktaru in front of them to desperately block against the advancing guards. I thought as much. Indeed, the orc chieftain's guess was correct. By seizing the opening created from the high orcs being held up, Guruktaru stood before Jinha. So, it was you. The orc used the hand not holding the scimitar and grabbed Jinha's neck, before lifting her up. The female, with her airways squeezed tight, couldn't even scream properly. This caused Guruktaru to tilt its head. It was such a weak, slender neck that it'd get broken just from the monster squeezing a little harder than usual. But, how could such a weak human manage to complete a high-class sorcery that changed warriors into immortals? There was a simple way to find out. Kill her and I'll see. And, just as Guruktaru began squeezing the female's neck to snap it in half, from afar, the cry of a sky dragon resounded out. Right away, Guruktaru felt every hair on its body stand up. What is this? As time slowed down from the extreme tension it felt, the orc chieftain's instincts of a warrior, trained to their very limit, sent out countless warning bells. Guruktaru quickly discarded the human female, and with the movements akin to a wild animal, fled to the door of the classroom. Boom. A mighty, ear-splitting explosion occurred next, the shards of glass flying out like shrapnel. Meanwhile, orcs manning the doorways began hastily retreating away after the back of their chieftain suddenly appeared in front of their eyes. Guruktaru wordlessly glared forward, its breathing now becoming extremely cautious. It was picking up on an unusual and eerie vibe. It could see a human male it hadn't seen before standing on the spot where the human female was just now. Guruktaru shifted its gaze ever so slightly to the side. Its opposite corner was where the windows were. Nothing remained of the entirety of that wall as if it had been struck by a powerful siege weapon. Even with its excellent dynamic visual acuity, the orc chieftain still failed to follow that man's movements. Gyrektaru could only swallow its saliva at the sudden entrance of a powerful opponent. The new enemy completely ignored the presence of the orc chieftain and its underlings, and simply proceeded to confirm the human female's condition. Gyrektaru spoke to its enemy. I am Gyrektaru, from the proud tribe of Red Blade. That was the warrior's introduction only granted to an opponent capable of reaping away the orc's life. Having completed its introduction, Gyrektaru asked the human male, "And who are you?" Jinwoo raised his head and quietly spoke. "Shut your mouth and quietly wait for your turn over there." A human just used the language of the orcs. The orcs' surprise lasted only for a moment. Perhaps it was because of the power carried in that man's voice. None of the orcs, which included Gyrektaru itself, could even dare to budge an inch from the spot. Jinwoo asked, his expression hard and unforgiving. "Are you all right, Appa?" Jinha finally stopped coughing and jumped into his embrace, tears streaming from her eyes. Jinwoo gently stroked her hair as if he was soothing a scared child. Appa, Jinha's Appa. That means, the students finally realized who the man in front of their eyes was. He was Seong Jinwoo, a hunter ranked S. We're saved. He very cautiously separated his sister from him as she tried hard not to leave his side. He then called out his shadow soldiers matching the exact number of the surviving students. Everyone, follow my summons out of the building. The students nodded their heads, and the soldiers proceeded to pick them up in an embrace. As for Jinha, he entrusted her especially to Ygritte. Please wait for me downstairs, okay? I'm going to join you very soon after dealing with this. Normally, Jinha would try to stop her Appa, telling him that they should go together regardless of whether he was a rank S hunter or not. No, she'd still say that even if he was something greater. But now, she couldn't do that, because Jinwoo's current expression was far too scary for her to say those words. So, Jinha could only nod her head. Jinwoo gave out his signal, and the soldiers carrying the students jumped outside of the destroyed wall one by one. Orcs in the corridor flinched slightly at the sight of the almost caught prey making their escape. When that happened, Jinwoo glared at them with his ice-cold eyes. I told you not to move. Like some kind of a lie, all orcs stopped moving altogether. None of them could go against his glare. After confirming that all of the students had left the classroom safely, Jinwoo turned around to face the orcs. He didn't let them leave because he was worried about them getting injured. These measly orcs. He was confident of killing them all in the blink of an eye. He simply didn't want to show his little sister or other kids what was about to happen in here, that was all. And now, there were no more eyes watching. Gyrektaru asked him again, "Who are you? How can you speak our tongue?" Jinwoo ignored the orcs' words and slowly made his way over to them. Realizing that the human male had no intentions to answer back, Gyrektaru bared its fangs and shouted out, "Attack!" The brave orc warriors pounced on Jinwoo all at once after hearing the chieftain's order. When they did, the time froze. Within this freeze frame of a moment, Jinwoo leisurely walked in between the orcs that were moving agonizingly slowly, and proceeded to destroy them one by one. He didn't even need to take his weapons out. He only needed to use his finger. Every time Jinwoo's finger brushed by an orc, heads, shoulders, wrists, waists and midriffs of the monsters exploded into bits. And after utterly destroying over 20 orcs in one blink of an eye, Jinwoo stood before Gyrektaru. Jinwoo's left hand grabbed Gyrektaru's mouth and jaw, and the orc could only whimper pathetically. Jinwoo walked forward just like that and slammed the orc's head against the corridor's wall. The empty corridor reverberated with the thunderous boom. Jinwoo's gaze shifted towards either end of the corridor. It was filled with the remains of the students. It was truly a hard-to-look gruesome sight to behold. However, Jinwoo didn't avert his gaze and imprinted the sight of every single one of these kids in his mind, just so he could demand reparations from the guilty one responsible. Jinwoo shifted his eyes to Gyrektaru. Why? His voice was incomparably icy. Why does your kind want to kill humans to this extreme level? Gyrektaru had long lost its desire to resist and could only tremble in fear as it replied. In our heads, telling us to kill humans. Jinwoo became momentarily confused. Kill humans. He had heard of the exact same thing before. But, back then, he interpreted the word humans as another term for hunters. But it seemed that the word human really did mean all humans, now that he got to hear this monster's reply. Then, what about me? Jinwoo asked the orc again. Do you not hear the voice telling you to kill me? He brought his face closer. It was inevitable that Gyrektaru would look into Jinwoo's eyes. The orc began shaking its head and shivered hard as if it had discovered something in there. Forgive me. Something impossible happened. The brave and mighty great warrior of the orc race began shedding tears like a little child. Jinwoo felt the inside of his head suddenly cool off as he watched the terrified monster cowering before him. So, that's how it is. He was not being seen as a human even in this guy's head, was that it? Well, it doesn't really matter. Jinwoo wasn't all that interested in how monsters viewed him. No, he simply killed them because they were out to harm humans. Directaru shivered and continued sob as the fear it couldn't overcome completely enveloped it. Please, forgive. Jinwoo replied. I'll forgive you. And then, he summoned the Demon King's short sword. However, do not think that the process will be a painless one for you. The Night Order Guild's assault team could only gasp out in astonishment while spectating on the battles of the monsters. How could it be? How could anyone call this a raid now? Because the ants very easily subdued the undead monsters and then began greedily devouring them. If they eat up everything like that, nothing will be left behind, you know. Right? Even the magic crystals. The hunters could only anxiously look on as the top-class magic crystals all ended up in the stomachs of these monsters. No, summoned creatures. Unable to watch from the sidelines any longer, Jiang Yi-rim hastily ran out. Don't you know how expensive that is? She tried to wrestle away the corpse of a vampire, but that only managed to annoy the ant, and the creature swung its arm at her direction. She cried out and tumbled backwards after the ant's claw cut into her forearm, just as she tried to get up while rubbing her butt. By the time she regained her wits, the ant monster that swung its arm was standing before her. The creature had its gigantic maw and its horrifying mandibles wide open as if to swallow her head whole. Jiang Yi-rim's expression froze stiff at that moment. It was then. Beru had come swooping in and turned that ant around. He opened his own maw wide just like how this ant did a moment ago, and then he screeched out incredibly loudly, being subjected to the rage of an existence on another level. The ant creature couldn't even meet Beru's gaze and simply shivered in fear. Beru let go of the ant's shoulder, causing the creature to hurriedly scurry away from there. Jiang Yi-rim watched this scene play out in a total daze, but Beru approached her and extended his hand out. Still stupefied over everything, she grabbed the offered hand and was able to finally stand back up. She was about to say something, only for her lips to stop, because she saw the gentle blue light circulating around Beru's fingertips. That was why. Healing magic. Jiang Yi-rim's brows shot up real high in surprise. The wound in her arm healed up immediately the moment that blue light touched her. After confirming that her wound was completely cured, Beru turned towards the ants and shouted out. That caused the ants to end their mealtime and began moving deeper into the dungeon's interior. Jiang Yi-rim watched the back of Beru and murmured to herself, how can a summon cast better healing magic than me? Because of the nature of the incident itself, a massive crowd of people had rushed towards the school's perimeters. My son goes to this school. Get out of the way. I need to confirm what happened with my own eyes. If it weren't for the desperate crowd control efforts by the police and the association's employees, the scene of the incident would have descended into pure pandemonium from the maddened crowd. The reporters had also rushed here as soon as word got out and were now busy snapping away with their cameras. In a way, you could say that today's tragedy has been foretold in advance. His expression was hard. On the other hand, Jinwoo was feeling confused. Does that mean the association didn't do anything about an incident they could have prevented in advance? Before his confusion had the chance to transform into anger, the association president pulled out his phone and showed Jinwoo its display. It showed a graphical chart. This shows the increase in the gate activity around the city of Seoul for the last 6 months. The dots drew a gentle curvature, but when it got nearer to present, it suddenly spiked up steeply. And this side shows the stats from around the world. If the association president didn't make that clear, Jinwoo might have mistaken them for two of the exact same thing. That was how similar looking the inclines in those two graphs were. The numbers of gates appearing has spiked up noticeably throughout the world. Go-Gun Huey's complexion got darker and darker. However, that isn't the only strange thing. He returned the phone back into his inner jacket pocket and carried on. People wanting to confirm their awakened rankings are practically lining up in a long queue outside the association every day now. The number of gates where monsters come out was increasing, and at the same time, the number of hunters who were supposed to block the gates was also increasing. As if to maintain a balance, anyone could tell something big was afoot from that data. Unfortunately, that didn't mean Jinwoo could do anything about them right now. It was the same story for Go-Gun Huey as well. Also, a simple phone call would have sufficed if it was about sharing of information and a hypothesis. Jinwoo thought that association president wouldn't have taken time out of his packed schedule to simply have this conversation. In that case, what you wished to talk to me about was. As if he was waiting for that, Go-Gun Huey picked up a briefcase resting by the footwell and pulled out various documents from there. Japan, the States, China, Russia, France, Britain, Germany, and even from the Middle East. All the nations with some international clout were brought up abruptly. These are all the official documents sent in from those nations that wish to make contact with you, Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim. I'm fairly certain that some of them even have made unofficial contacts with you already. Jinwoo briefly recalled the incident involving the American Hunter Bureau's people, but decided not to mention it. In all honesty, we at the Hunters Association simply don't have any rights to stop these people. No, we can only protect your personal information according to your requests. Jinwoo silently listened to the older man's story. I know that everything depends on your decision, Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim, but I fear that our country will not be able to adapt to the incoming changes if you decide to leave us. Rather than a concrete answer, Jinwoo shifted his gaze out of the car's window. As he fell deeper into a myriad of distracting thoughts, one of the biggest hospitals in the country entered his view. It was the very hospital where Jinha had been admitted to. We will provide you with every convenience we can possibly provide. Go-Gun Huey stuffed the documents back inside the briefcase and asked Jinwoo with a tense expression, "So, would you please remain in South Korea?" The Night Order's assault team chased after the ants and arrived at the boss chamber's entrance. The hunters at the back of the pack suddenly became rather noisy. "Chairman, there are a lot of things coming from our rear." "Yeah, I can hear them coming, too. Everyone, enter the boss room, now." Their sole hope for survival was the summoned creatures left behind by Hunter Seong Jinwoo. After confirming that every last hunter had entered, Park Jong-soo shouted out, veins popping up in his throat, "Block the exit." Jeong Yi-rim activated her skill, Holy Wall, and blocked up the entryway connecting the boss room and the passageway before it. The Death Knight standing in front of the rushing horde noisily pounded on the invisible barrier. Her forehead soaked in cold sweat now, Jeong Yi-rim turned her head towards Park Jong-soo. "Chairman, I won't be able to hold this for more than 5 minutes, tops." I know. Not only Park Jong-soo, but the rest of the assault team members had finished preparing for a battle in case the wall was breached. "Oh, my dear lord." His eyes opened even wider than before. The boss monster currently standing in a face-off against the ants was something even Park Jong-soo knew of, after hearing about it many times in the past. A pale-faced mage wearing a tattered robe, the Arch-lich. It was the strongest undead-type monster, thought to be the creature at the top of the undead food chain. Why did it have to be a DMN Arch-lich? Park Jong-soo's complexion darkened considerably. He prayed for the summoned creatures to quickly kill the boss and help them out, but then, the opponent turned out to be a DMN Arch-lich. It'd be more realistic for the hunters to get rid of the scores of undead first and help the summoned creatures out next. It was then, Beru took a step forward towards the Arch-lich. The Arch-lich then immediately summoned over a dozen Death Knights around the ants and surrounded them. Beru bared his fangs and extended its claws out. The Arch-lich recognized the black smoke continuously rising up from Beru's entire body. It was almost as if the completely empty eye sockets had widened for a second there. The Shadow Army. The language of the monsters came out from the Arch-lich's mouth. Beru retracted his claws after hearing the boss's words. The Arch-lich swept its gaze around the ants behind Beru and asked in a puzzled voice, "Why is the king's personal army attacking us?" Kekek. Beru leaked out a sound that sounded like a cackle of ridicule, before pointing to himself. "We have been chosen by the king." And then, he pointed at the Arch-lich. "And you weren't." The Arch-lich couldn't believe it, its voice now containing a trace of anger. "That can't be. I shall personally report to the king and..." Unfortunately, even before the Arch-lich could finish its sentence, Beru appeared right before its stunned eyes. The shoulders of the Arch-lich quivered momentarily. Beru was a high-class monster that the owner of a rank S dungeon sacrificed its own life force to create. Even if its overall stats had fallen a little ever since becoming a shadow soldier, there was just no way that an owner of a measly rank A dungeon, an Arch-lich, could fight against Beru. The former Ant King simply thrust its hand into the shocked boss's chest without hesitation. The hand pierced through the chest, along with the pendant hanging on the Arch-lich's neck. Beru's hand exiting from the back of the Arch-lich was grasping the pendant now. That piece of jewelry was basically the heart of the Arch-lich. It wasn't all that difficult for Beru, once a top monster himself, to detect what was supplying the life force to his enemy. The Arch-lich desperately shook its head. "No, this can't be." However, Beru didn't pay any attention to the pleading of his enemy, and simply crushed the pendant in his hand. "Krek, you talk too much for someone about to die." Along with Beru's words, the body of the Arch-lich crumbled to dust. Park Jong-soo's jaw dropped to the floor. He was so shocked that he needed some time to process the event his own 2 eyes had witnessed just now. How could it kill the Arch-Lich in one hit? There was an event that catapulted the Arch-Lich as a pretty infamous creature among the boss-level monsters, and that would be the incident of the Gold Dragon Guild's annihilation. An entire guild was completely destroyed by a single Arch-Lich. Not just any guild either, but one that was supposed to be quite powerful even within China, no less. But then again, that might have been an obvious result. The Arch-Lich could continuously summon out Death Knights anytime it wanted to. And one Death Knight was a very powerful undead-type monster that required the bitter struggle of multiple rank hunters to defeat. If you underestimated the boss monster simply because it didn't have any guards around it initially, then you'd not be able to escape the fate of total destruction. In the end, a dungeon break occurred from the gate the Gold Dragon Guild failed to close. China's own special authority rank hunter Liu Zhaijing arrived in the nick of time so the incident didn't turn into a catastrophe. But still, many hunters got to know the terror an Arch-Lich posed through this incident. Hyung Nim, wasn't that an Arch-Lich? Yeah, it was. The thing that came out of the gate during that Gold Dragon Guild incident. If that's true, then that ain't just one-shotted an Arch-Lich. Jiang Yunti now formed a completely disbelieving expression. What a scary power. They had seen the extent of his power in Jeju Island, but having witnessed it for real, they had to concede the fact that he possessed an incredible ability. Xiang Jinwoo Hunter Nim doesn't even need to enter a gate and still gets to clear it by just sending these guys in. No. Jiang Yunti spoke without thinking too much about what he was saying. However, Park Jong-soo felt goosebumps break out all over his skin after he thought about what his deputy just mentioned in passing. The number of summons Hunter Seong brought out back in Jeju Island was at least over 200. That was only from those that got caught on camera. So, it was difficult to even estimate how many more he could actually summon out at once. What if he didn't even need to make a single move, but simply send out his summons to clear out dungeons? Hyung Nim, let's not waste more time and push ahead with merging our guild with Seong Hunter Nim's guild. You really want to try your luck with that, Hyung Nim? Think about it. Combine Seong Hunter Nim's abilities with our guild's know-how. Even the likes of the Hunters Guild should be terrified by our potential, man. Would Vice Chairwoman Cha Hyun leave the Hunters Guild and join hands with Hunter Seong for no reason? Of course not. You honestly believe that Seong Hunter Nim needs us? Park Jong-soo tutted and explained in detail. Do you really think that Seong Jinwoo Hunter Nim will be able to disregard the law if he wants to work? Excuse me, even if it's possible for his summons to clear dungeons, he still needs to fill up the minimum headcount for the raid team. No. Oh, hearing that plausible explanation, Jiang Yunti's expression brightened up once more. You're right, Hyung Nim. As the two men stared at each other with happy smiles on their faces, the ground beneath their feet trembled ever so softly. With the death of the boss-level monster, the gate was starting to close up.